Hello and welcome to this Tuts Plus series Tumblr Theming 101. In this video we're going to continue creating the markup for our theme and we're going to concentrate on the quote and chat post types. So just a quick reminder of what we did in the previous video. In the previous video we created the markup for our photo post types and our text post types. So what we need to do is we need to jump to the documentation first and go to the post section. And we're going to code up the markup for the quote post type. So if we have a look at the documentation underneath posts and find the block name for quote, which is surprisingly called quote, we'll add that in. Again, we can go through adding the markup for these post types quite quickly because we've already done the work on the footer outside, well, not specific to a post type, rather to all the post types. So again, that's coding a little bit more sensibly to do less work for you, but let Tumblr do some more work for you, if that makes sense. So anyway, back to the quote. And if we go to the navigation and find the section for quote posts, now there are 4 variables or blocks. So we have the quote variable, which is the content of this post. Then we have a block called source, which acts as a safeguard, and what this does is if there is a source or a source has been added to the post, then it'll return source. It'll let you return something in the middle of it. And then finally we have length, which is actually quite cool, but we'll go over that in a moment. So first I'm going to do the quote. Now, as this is a quote, I'm going to use the block quote element. And inside that, we're going to include quote. And then we're going to include the block for the source. So again, what this is going to do is it's going to check that the post actually contains a source. And then we're going to include it. Now, I'm not going to wrap this source variable in any text-related HTML element because the source may contain HTML. So let's Tumblr and the CMS handle giving me HTML for that. So the last variable is length. Now length is pretty handy for altering how the quote is displayed. Now, for instance, this quote at the moment looks great because it's 2 lines, so the big text works. However, if the quote was, say, 10, 15, 20 lines, it would take up quite a lot of space on the screen and it wouldn't be very visually nice to read. So what we can do is we can utilize Tumblr again, and what it will do is it will tell us if the quote in this post is short, medium, or long. And all we're going to do is we're going to ask it to print the length here. So on our block quote, we're going to get back a class of short, medium, or long, and then we can style accordingly. So if it's a short block quote, we can increase the font size. A medium, we can decrease it, and then if it's a long one, we can decrease it even shorter. You can even change visually how the quote is displayed because it's CSS and, well, CSS. I wish that was the answer to more things in life, but yeah, you can utilize this, and I actually think that's really nice because there has been a point where I've designed a quote for Tumblr and I've done it using my content, and then a user's gone and used their content and it's completely different and the design didn't work. So this way you can put a few fallbacks in so your theme is versatile. So that's the quote post type taken care of, and let's just include that on our site. Okay, and as you can see now, it does not matter how slow you go so long as you do not stop. Words of Confucius. And that is our quote. And again, there's our photo and caption. Here's our text post with a title. Here's the content for a text post. And then finally, here is the text post without a title. Now again, I apologize for the lack of visual separation, but let's just get the markup out the way and we can worry about the style later. So that is the quote post type taken care of, and then we're going to look at the chat post type. Now, the chat post type, I'm not going to lie, is my least favorite, purely because it's very hard to style differently, and it can be a bit of a pain to create the markup. But we'll go have a look at the documentation. Going back to the top, look for your posts, look for the block related to chat, so render for conversations. So block chat. Okay, and again, remember to close. Now, it's worth pointing out, if you don't close a block, then the view would render how you would imagine. Basically, if I didn't close, say, the quote, then if I return any content in here, it would get returned as part of the quote as well. So always make sure that you've got an open and a close for your blocks. So go back to the top and let's go to the actual section for the chat posts. Okay, now I'll try my best to make this as easy as possible. Chat posts can have a title, so I probably need to revise my earlier statement where I said that text posts were the only post type to have a title. I clearly got it wrong. Chat posts can also have a title, and again, it's guarded by this block title. You then use block lines to render your markup for each of the lines in the conversation. You then have a label, a name, a line, and a user number, and an alt variable. Now, I would use the name because it will return the name of the person in the conversation. And I would also use the alt because then that gives you a way to add an odd and even line for sorry, it gives you a way to add an odd and even class for each of the lines. You could use CSS and obviously env child or something like that, but again, as we're supporting Internet Explorer 8, yay, then we'll just stick with what Tumblr can provide us. Again, this reiterates, let's use as much as we can from Tumblr because it's server generated anyway. It's going to be there on the page when it's requested. So let's make the most of what we can get hold of. So let's have a look at the design. Now, the design itself doesn't actually encompass a title. And I think for the time being, we're going to leave it that way. We're just going to create the markup specifically for what I have designed. So the name and then the line. That's all we're going to do. And then we're going to obviously include the alt variable so we can get these two different colors going on. So we'll go back to the documentation. Now, OL, UL, definition list, pick your weapon. I'm going to go with a OL because the chat would be in an order. And then I'm going to pick LI, obviously, because it's a list item. And then I'm going to include a name variable. And then the line. Now, neither of these will work as it at the moment because what we need to do is we need to include the block for the lines. So what we essentially are saying here is for a post that is a chat post, we will print a ordered list, and for each of them lines I would like to create a list item that contains a name and then the line of that chat. And again, as I mentioned, we're going to use class, and we're going to use the alt. Okay, and just to make it a little bit more fancy, what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap the name in a span, and then what we'll do is we'll actually style the span. So we'll do something like odd span. Something that's worth probably mentioning as we're going along is I tried to leave as many classes off as possible. So, for instance, I would know somebody who would class this up as a conversation. They would put a title tag here, etc., etc. The reason I'm not doing this at the moment is because we're going to actually use the parent element to be the selector for the CSS, and I will explain that once we've actually gone through and created all the markup for these post types. So that would be our chat post type, I believe. So let's just take that and put that into the editor and click save, and then hopefully okay, so let's just have a quick look at this markup, see what we got. Okay, so we've got our ordered list, we've got our li, and we've got odd, even, odd, even, odd, even, odd, even. And then we've got our span with the name, and then we've got the text. Now, there is a couple of things here that need fixing. Firstly, I believe I've probably used the wrong variable for the span element, and I believe that I should be using label. It's actually funny because I actually re-recorded this video thinking, as I'd mentioned label previously, and thought I was wrong, but oh well. So what we need to do is we need to go back to the documentation, over there, okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to remove the name variable, and then we are going to use the safety guard of block label. So we're going to sort of bust open this li, okay, and then we're going to add in this block label. Now what I'm hoping will happen here is that we will actually get the usernames of the people in the chat. So you can understand why I'm not a huge fan of this post type. So that's the label. And then what we're going to, the final thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to wrap my my line variable in a paragraph. Now the reason for this is, one, I wanted to pick up the styling by default that I set for the theme, and two, I believe that the content that is returned in a chat is just a string, so I prefer to have that text in something. And finally, I'm just going to try and make this look more like an li rather than no, it's going to work. We'll just leave it as it is for the time being. So, just to clarify, for any post type that is a chat post type, for any post that is a chat post type, we will create a ordered list. Now, for each line of the conversation, we will create an li, and we will alternate a class name between odd and even. Inside this li, we will return a label which should be wrapped in a span element, and the label will be returned here. This label should be the name of the person having the conversation. Finally, we will return the line of the actual conversation. I'm still not 100% sure about... Right, this is what I'm going to do. No. Yeah, for the time being, I'm going to actually remove the wrapping on that, and we'll worry about that later on. So that's the markup done. So that is a chat post. So click save, take all of that, and then we're going to post it into the editor. Again, it's down to interpretation. I'm displaying the same content, but it depends on what elements you would like to wrap around that. So now if we go down to the chat, hey, that's a bit more like it. So here's our chat post type, and as you can see, we have ROL again, our ordered list. We have our lists with a class. Then we have a span, which includes the person who was having the chat, and then the text that they spoke, so to speak. And that is that. So that is the chat post type and the quote post taken care of, post type taken care of, along with the photo and the text. So in the next video, let's go back to the design, we'll be looking at the audio and we'll do audio and video in the next video. Yeah, we'll do audio and video in the next video. I would like to thank you for joining me for this video, and I hope you can join me in the next one.